The music hits Alani's chest with steady, dull beats. Not light, but hundreds of bright needles pierce the darkness. Red, blue, and green beams cut through the smoky air curtain. Alani sits at a high table against the wall. She gently nods her head to the rhythm of the melody. Her hair, dazzling white, thick curls, has a life of its own. Each neon beam finds a glittering curl, igniting it from within. From the sidelines, it looks as if her head has been sprinkled with diamond dust. DeMarcus sits next to her. He's talking. His lips move confidently. His white teeth gleam in the dim light. He's talking about an important deal that's about to close. He talks about connections, about money, about the future. His hand, wearing an expensive watch, rests on the table next to hers. Elaine nods. She smiles when she needs to. She says, "Really?" And "It can't be." But her thoughts are elsewhere. Her eyes dart around the room. She sees people dancing, their shadows flickering in the light. She sees bartenders juggling glasses. She sees girls laughing at the counter. It all seems like a scene from someone else's movie. She's here, but she's not here. This date was DeMarcus's idea. He'd been persistently asking her out for weeks. She agreed because she was tired of being alone in her small apartment. She agreed because he looked confident and well-dressed. And now she's thinking about an unfinished project at work. Thinking about her cat, whom she left alone. Thinking about how these shoes are beautiful, but a little tight. DeMarcus touches her arm to get her attention. She flinches and looks back at him. "Are you listening?" he asks, his smile tightening slightly. "Of course," Eleni says quickly. "It's just really loud. And the light's in the way." She smiles again, hoping it looks genuine. DeMarcus studies her face for a second. Then his expression softens. He assumes she's simply tired. "You need something else to drink. I'll go order one. Your favorite. A strawberry mojito?" Alani nods, grateful for the pause. "Yes, thank you." DeMarcus stands up. He's tall and broad in a fashionable jacket. He makes his way to the bar, deftly weaving between tables and dancers. Alani watches him until he disappears into the crowd at the bar. She leans back in her chair and takes a deep breath. Now she can stop smiling. Now she can just sit. She surveys the room once more, slowly, unhurriedly. Her gaze wanders over the faces, the lights, the gleaming details of the interior, and suddenly she feels herself being watched. This isn't the fleeting glance of someone passing by. This is intense, piercing attention. It's almost physical, like a slight tingling on her skin. Alani slowly turns her head to the right, toward the darkest corner of the room, where the light barely reaches. There, in deep shadow, stands a separate table. It is hidden from the main part of the room by a high partition. A man sits behind it. The details of his face are impossible to discern, only a dark outline, a silhouette. But Alani clearly sees that he is looking directly at her, not at the dance floor, not at the bar, but specifically at her table. At her. She freezes. Her first feeling is mild annoyance. Perhaps this is just some intrusive admirer? She looks away, pretending to search for something in her small purse. After a few seconds, she quickly glances into the corner again. The silhouette does not move. His gaze remains fixed on her. There is no impudence in it, no smile. There is only calm, unwavering observation. Alani feels an inexplicable anxiety. She turns to the table, picks up her almost empty glass, and pretends to drink. She wants DeMarcus to come back soon. Han Ji-hoon sits in a dark corner. He leans back in a low leather chair. One hand rests on the table, his fingers slowly tracing the condensation on a glass of dark liquid and ice. He's not drinking. He's watching. His gaze is clear and distinct, despite the smoke and dim light. He's not simply looking at the beautiful white-haired girl, though she certainly draws his attention. He's looking at the whole picture. The girl, her companion, the distance between them at the table. Her posture, slightly closed, distant. His, turned toward her, intrusive. Ji-hoon sees her nod, but her eyes are empty. He sees her companion talking non-stop, oblivious to her absence. Ji-hoon knows this type of man, confident in his rights, seeing a girl as just another pretty accessory for the evening. His own face reveals nothing. No disdain, no interest, no boredom. It's the face of a man accustomed to noticing everything and showing nothing. He runs this place. Not legally, perhaps, but practically. Everything happens here with his tacit consent. He rarely appears in the hall, preferring his office upstairs. Today, he came out to check out the situation, and now his analytical mind, usually preoccupied with numbers, contracts, and the balance of power, has found an object to observe. This couple is like a small living stage, and Ji-hoon detects a dissonance in it, a false note. The girl is tense. The man is trying too hard. Ji-hoon takes a sip from his glass. His attention is completely focused on them. DeMarcus finally makes his way to the bar. He catches the bartender's eye and raises 2 fingers to order. While the bartender prepares drinks, DeMarcus glances over his shoulder. He searches for Alani, sees her white mane in the spotlight, and smiles with satisfaction. Then his gaze becomes focused. He quickly glances around again. The people around him are busy with their own conversations. No one is looking at him. Then DeMarcus makes a quick movement. He adjusts the cuff of his jacket with his left hand, and with his right, lowered below the counter, he takes a small, clear packet from his pants pocket. It contains several tiny, indeterminately colored pills. His entire body obscures this maneuver from the audience, but not from the corner where Jihoon is sitting. From this angle, everything is visible. Jihoon watches the man at the bar, tense in an unnatural motion. He sees the small, shiny package flash between his fingers. He watches DeMarcus, with a deft, practiced gesture, open the packet over one of the glasses just placed in front of him. The tiny pellets fall silently into the bright yellow drink with its mint leaves. The tablets dissolve almost instantly, leaving only a faint, cloudy haze that disappears a second later. DeMarcus crumples the empty packet in his fist and puts his hand back in his pocket. The bartender, busy preparing a second cocktail, doesn't notice. Jihoon's face remains completely stony. Not a muscle moves. Only his eyes, always calm, narrow just a millimeter. Everything instantly snaps into place in his mind. The picture becomes clear. The false note has become an outright threat. He sets his glass aside. His time to observe is over. DeMarcus pays the bartender, taking a glass in each hand. A bright strawberry mojito for her, a cloudy yellow pineapple cocktail for himself. He turns his back to the bar and begins to carefully make his way back to their table. His face lights up with anticipation. At this moment, Han Ji-hoon rises smoothly from his seat. His movements are economical and quiet. He doesn't draw attention to himself. From the outside, it seems as if he's simply decided to leave his table, perhaps to go to the restroom or outside. He walks neither quickly nor slowly. His path leads across the room, and he inevitably crosses paths with DeMarcus, who's walking toward him. Jihoon looks straight ahead, seemingly oblivious to the man with the glasses. His entire attention is focused on calculating time and distance. They converge at the narrowest point, between the dance floor and a group of high tables. It's darker here, less crowded. Jihoon walks with his head slightly bowed, as if pondering something. At the last moment, as DeMarcus prepares to pass him, Jihoon takes a slight but unexpected step to the left. His shoulder collides softly but precisely with DeMarcus's elbow. DeMarcus, who had been completely focused on not spilling his drinks, flinches in surprise. His hands twitch. The glasses in them tip sharply. The yellow cocktail and the bright red mojito spill over the rim, drenching his fingers and part of the floor with icy liquid. DeMarcus lets out a short, strangled curse. He instinctively stops, trying to maintain his balance and not drop the glasses completely. Han Ji-hoon stops immediately. He turns to DeMarcus. His face expresses immediate, seemingly genuine concern. "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's entirely my fault. I didn't look," he says. His voice is low, calm, polite. It rings with genuine apology. Without waiting for an answer, Jihoon gestures to the approaching waiter. He instantly appears with a small white napkin. Jihoon takes it. "Allow me." He hands the napkin to DeMarcus to wipe his hands. He takes another napkin and makes a few precise movements, wiping up the drips from the floor to prevent slipping. All his actions are quick, efficient, and thoughtful. He creates a complete picture of the accident and the subsequent correction. DeMarcus stands, clenching his teeth. His irritation is written all over his face. He's clearly angry about the ruined moment, about his wet hands, about this awkward encounter. He mutters something like, "It's okay, it happens," but it sounds insincere. He wants this incident to be over with. He wipes his hands, tosses the wet napkin onto the waiter's tray, and grabs the glasses again. "It's fine, don't worry," he tells Jihoon more sharply, and turns to leave. It is in this brief moment, when DeMarcus's attention is completely focused on his irritation and desire to leave, when the waiter is distracted, collecting napkins, and the movement in the room subsides for a second, that Han Ji-hoon makes his most important move. He's still standing next to the waiter's tray, which is covered with used napkins. On that same tray, right in front of him, DeMarcus placed both glasses for a split second to dry his hands. The glasses stand side by side. The one in DeMarcus's right hand is a bright red mojito. The one in his left is a cloudy yellow pineapple cocktail. Jihoon's movement is almost invisible. His right hand, holding a clean napkin, hovers momentarily over the tray, as if he's about to wipe something else. The fingers of his left hand, hidden from view by his body and shadow, make a light, ghostly gesture. He doesn't pick up the glasses, merely nudges their bases with his thumb and index finger. He simply switches their positions. Now the bright red mojito is on the left. The cloudy yellow cocktail is on the right. The entire maneuver takes less than a second. Jihoon takes a step back, giving DeMarcus space. He nods again in apology. "Have a nice evening," he says in his low, even voice. DeMarcus grabs the glasses without even looking. His brain, occupied with anger and anticipation, works on autopilot. He holds the glasses as usual, the one for him in his right hand, the one for hers in his left. But he doesn't know that now in his right hand is a bright, clear mojito, and in his left is that same yellow cocktail, in which the contents of the small bag have just dissolved. He doesn't even look at the drinks. He simply hurries back to Alani, to his table, to finally put his plan into action. Han Ji-hoon watches him go. Then he slowly returns to the shadows of his corner, but doesn't sit. He stands, watching as DeMarcus approaches the white-haired girl and hands her a glass. That same glass. Clean. Ji-hoon takes one deep breath and exhales. His work here is done. Now he will observe the aftermath. DeMarcus returns to the table. His face is beaming with confidence again, and the irritation from the confrontation has almost disappeared. A strange, feverish glint appears in his eyes. It's a mixture of excitement, anticipation, and a slight nervous tension. He feels in control, in control. "Sorry I'm late," he says, his voice a little louder than before. There's a bit of a crush. He sets the glasses down on the table with a light thud, his movements a little too abrupt. He hands Alani her drink, a tall glass full of bright red liquid, laced with strawberry chunks and mint leaves. The ice clinks cheerfully against the sides. "Thank you," Alani says, accepting the glass. Her fingers brush the cool glass. She notices that strange glint in his eyes and freezes for a moment. It's not just the joy of seeing him again. There's something familiar and unpleasant in that look. She's seen it in people about to win a large sum of money or about to take a risk. A slight unease, the same one that had been there before he left, stirs quietly within her. DeMarcus himself picks up his glass, the same one that now stands to his right, a cloudy yellow cocktail with a chunk of pineapple on the rim. He doesn't even look at it. He's too busy watching Alani, watching her reaction. DeMarcus lifts his yellow cocktail. He holds it high, so that the spotlight catches and ignites the pale liquid. "Well then," he says, his voice solemn, "let's drink to our acquaintance, to new, interesting encounters, and to making this evening a memorable one." He looks straight into Alani's eyes, and his smile widens, almost strained. There's a hidden meaning in these words that only he understands. He knows that this evening will truly be memorable, for a long time. Alani smiles politely in return. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. She feels awkward about this pompous toast. Their meeting isn't the beginning of a great friendship or romance. It's just a date. She raises her glass, nodding slightly. "To a new acquaintance," she repeats quietly, avoiding his gaze. Her glass of strawberry mojito softly clinks against his glass of yellow cocktail. The sound is dull, joyless. Without waiting for her to take a sip, DeMarcus lifts his glass to his mouth. He wants to set an example, wants her to drink too. He takes a long, confident gulp. The pineapple-flavored liquid is scalding cold. He swallows it down, barely tasting it. His gaze never leaves Alani. Alani raises her glass to her lips, much more slowly. She doesn't want to drink. Her anxiety is growing. That strange glint in his eyes, that rush, that feeling that he's waiting for her to do something specific. It all adds up to an unpleasant picture. She simply touches her lips to the cool rim of the glass. She pretends to drink, but in reality, she only smells the sweet scent of strawberries and mint. She doesn't take a single sip. Then she sets the glass back down on the table, holding it in her hand. DeMarcus watches this. A slight shadow of displeasure crosses his face. "You don't like it?" he asks, his voice a little sharper. "No, it's fine. It's just really cold," Eleni replies quickly, touching her lips to the glass again, still not drinking. Her heart begins to beat a little faster. 3, maybe 4 minutes pass. DeMarcus sits across from me and continues talking, but his voice changes. At first, he simply speaks a little faster, hurriedly, jumping from topic to topic. Then his words begin to fumble. He utters a long sentence, but suddenly stops mid-sentence, as if he's forgotten what he's saying. His gaze loses its sharpness, becomes cloudy, unfocused. And then what's his name? He blinks several times in a row, slowly, as if his eyelids have grown heavy. He had such ideas, you know? Such brilliant. He draws out the word brilliant, unnaturally long. He shakes his head, trying to shake off the strange heaviness. His fingers drum on the table with an uncertain, faltering rhythm. Alani looks at him, her worry turning to confusion. What's wrong with him? He only took one long sip. He couldn't have been that drunk, unless he was already drunk. But no, he was acting completely normal. She watches as he tries to lift his glass again. His hand moves slowly, awkwardly. His fingers barely grip the stem. "DeMarcus?" Eleni calls softly. Her voice is hesitant. He doesn't react. He looks past her, at the wall or the dancing people, but his gaze is blank, unseeing. "DeMarcus, are you okay?" she says louder, leaning forward. He slowly turns his head towards her. His eyes find her face, but there is no recognition in them. They are glassy, detached. His lips move, but almost no sound comes out. He makes something like an inarticulate moan. Then he tries to smile, but it comes out crooked and terrifying. Alani feels a cold wave of fear rise from her stomach to her throat. Something is wrong with him, something serious. She looks around. The people around her are having fun. No one notices what's happening at their small table. The music drowns out everything. She doesn't know what to do. Scream? Call for help? But what will she say? My companion is unwell? What if it's just a feeling of illness? But her instincts scream for something else. She looks at his glass in panic, at the same yellow cocktail from which he took only one sip. And then a shadow appears next to their table. Alani looks up. Standing before her is the same stranger from the dark corner, the one who had been staring at her so intently. Now she sees his face. It is calm, almost imperturbable, beautiful, clear features, dark, very attentive eyes, now looking not at her, but at DeMarcus. His voice, when he begins to speak, is low and quiet. He doesn't try to shout over the music. He speaks so that his words can be heard clearly over the noise. "Your friend doesn't seem to be doing well," he says, and there's no panic or judgment in his tone, just a statement of fact. He clearly needs some fresh air, and maybe some help. Eleni freezes. She looks from the stranger to DeMarcus, who is now simply sitting, leaning back in his chair, his eyes half closed. I don't know what's wrong with him," she blurts out. "He just took a sip and—" "I saw," the stranger interrupts calmly. His gaze meets hers for a moment. There's no threat in his eyes. There's a strange confidence. "They won't help him here. Let me resolve this matter, so there won't be any unnecessary questions or problems for you." Eleni doesn't understand what he means by unnecessary questions, but his calm acts on her like an anchor in a storm. She nods, unable to utter a word. She just wants this nightmare to end. The stranger, whose name is Han Ji-hoon, doesn't ask any more questions. He turns his head slightly and gives a barely perceptible nod somewhere away from the table. From the crowd, as if out of nowhere, two men appear. They are dressed simply, in dark clothes. Their faces are imperturbable. They approach the table. They don't grab DeMarcus. They act carefully and professionally. One of them leans toward DeMarcus. "Hey, buddy, looks like you've had a bit too much," he says in a calm, friendly tone that only those nearby can hear. "Let's go for a walk. Clear our heads." His words sound so casual, as if this is a normal bar situation. The second man gently but firmly takes DeMarcus's arm. DeMarcus barely resists. He mumbles something, his legs buckling. Two men deftly take his weight. From the outside, it looks perfectly normal. Two friends helping a third man, who's had too much to drink, out into the street. No one turns around. No one shows any interest. Ji-hoon stands nearby, watching. His hands are hidden in his pants pockets. He looks at Ilani. "You shouldn't stay here alone either," he says in the same quiet, even voice. "Come with me. There's a quieter place here where you can come to your senses and understand everything." Eleni watches as the two men lead DeMarcus away, who now dangles almost limply between them. She feels relief that he's gone, and a new fear at what's happening. She looks at the stranger again. She has no choice. She can't stay here alone. She stands slowly, still clutching her full glass of strawberry cognac. "Mojito!" She nods, agreeing to follow him. They don't head toward the exit, but deeper into the room, to an inconspicuous wooden door next to the bar. One of the men opens it with a key. Beyond the door is a narrow staircase with a soft carpet. The music immediately becomes muffled, distant. Eleni automatically climbs the steps after Ji-hoon. Two of his assistants carry DeMarcus between them, his feet shuffling helplessly along the steps. Upstairs is a quiet, spacious hallway. It smells of wood, leather, and some kind of expensive, barely perceptible air freshener. No neon, no noise. Ji-hoon opens the first door on the right and gestures for Eleni to enter. This is the office, a large room furnished in a discreet and expensive style. On the floor is a thick gray carpet that absorbs all sound. Against one wall is a massive wooden desk with a computer. The other features a low sofa and two armchairs around a glass coffee table. The walls are decorated with abstract paintings in thin frames and a shelf of books. Two men gently, without unnecessary effort, lay DeMarcus down on the sofa. He barely resists, only uttering a muffled groan. His body is limp, his eyes closed. One of the men adjusts the pillow under his head. The other drapes a light blanket over him from the back of the sofa. From the outside, it might look like concern for a sick friend, if not for the complete detachment on the assistants' faces. Without looking at Alani, they leave the office and quietly close the door. Now there are only 3 people in the room. Alani, standing in the middle of the carpet, Jihoon at his desk, and DeMarcus sleeping on the couch. The silence after the roar of the hall seems deafening. Alani can hear only her own rapid breathing and DeMarcus's faint snores. Jihoon doesn't sit at his desk. He walks over to the coffee table and points to one of the chairs. "Please sit down. You look pale." His voice remains calm. There's no threat or false sympathy in it. Alani slowly sinks into the chair. She still holds the same glass of mojito in her hand. She sets it down on the glass table. The drink is barely touched. Jihoon stands before her, his hands tucked into his pockets. He doesn't fidget, doesn't try to fill the silence with empty words. He looks straight at her. "When your companion was ordering drinks at the bar," he begins evenly, "he added something to one of the glasses. Small pills. I saw it from my table." Alani freezes. Her eyes are wide open. She isn't breathing. Jihoon continues, his tone unchanging. "When he turned around, I stood up. I bumped into him to distract him. In the confusion, I switched the glasses on the tray. The glass he spiked was supposed to be yours. I made sure it ended up with him." He pauses briefly, letting this information sink in. Then he nods toward the sofa. He took a long sip from his glass. "You didn't. You can see the result for yourself. He drank his own potion. Now he'll just sleep it off. Nothing serious will happen to him, but he won't wake up soon, and he'll feel some discomfort." The stranger's words fall into the silence of the office like heavy stones. Alani looks at him, then at DeMarcus. His face is sleeping, relaxed. His breathing is deep and even. "No," she whispers. She shakes her head. "It can't be. Why? Why?" Her mind desperately searches for a logical explanation. Maybe this stranger made it all up? Maybe DeMarcus was just having a sudden attack? An allergy? But the man's cold, clear story leaves no room for doubt. He's too specific. He saw the pills. He switched glasses. It all fits. The strange gleam in DeMarcus's eyes, his insistence that she drink, his sudden and strange weakness after one sip. She looks at her glass again. At the bright red, beautiful, refreshing drink, there could be something in it. Something that is now inside DeMarcus's body. The thought sends a chill down her spine. Everything inside her tightens into a tight, painful knot. Her hands begin to tremble. She presses them between her knees to hide the shaking, but it doesn't help. "Are you sure?" she asks, her voice hoarse and alien. She doesn't want to believe it. To believe it would be to admit that the man she spent the evening with wanted to do what? What did he want to do? The thought makes her physically ill. Jihoon watches her reaction. He sees shock, disbelief, and the onset of panic. He doesn't rush to reassure her with loud words. Instead, he turns to a small cabinet against the wall and opens it. Inside is a mini fridge and several bottles. He takes out a glass bottle of plain, unlabeled water and pours it into a tall glass. He approaches her and places a glass of water on the table in front of her. "Drink slowly. Plain water is best right now." Then he moves away and sits in the chair across the table from her. He doesn't approach her, doesn't invade her personal space. He simply sits, giving her time. "I don't demand gratitude," he says quietly, "and I don't expect an explanation from you. What I saw was enough for me." His actions were inappropriate. "I don't allow that in my establishment." He says "in my establishment" simply, as if it were a fact. It's not bragging, but a statement of responsibility. His politeness, his calm, his complete control of the situation seem unreal, unearthly at that moment. After the chaos, fear, and betrayal she's just experienced, this quiet confidence acts as an antidote, but it's also frightening. Who is this man who so easily manipulates people and circumstances? Alani picks up the glass of water. Her fingers are still shaking, and the water ripples. She takes a small sip. The cold liquid rolls down her throat, and this sensation, simple, physical, brings her back to reality a little. She looks at the sleeping man DeMarcus, then at his untouched glass of mojito, then at the man across from him, and understanding washes over her like a slow, heavy wave. It doesn't come all at once, but in pieces. If it weren't for this man, if he hadn't seen, if he hadn't come up to me, bumped into me, changed the glasses, then she would be lying on this couch right now, in a strange, deep sleep, alone and defenseless, in a room with a man who slipped something into her drink. What would he do next? Where would he take her? What would happen when she woke up? The horror of these thoughts is so vivid and physically palpable that Alani catches her breath. Her heart is pounding somewhere in her throat. She feels nauseous. She puts down the glass of water because her hands are shaking too much. She clenches her fists, digging her nails into her palms. The pain helps her hold back for a little while, to keep from crying, from screaming. She looks at Ji-hoon. Now her gaze is different. There's no longer any mistrust in it. There's shock bordering on panic, and a deep, visceral gratitude that she can't yet express in words. I'd have a drink, she says quietly, barely aware that she's speaking out loud. If you hadn't, I'd have taken a sip so as not to upset him. She can't finish. The lump in her throat is getting in the way. She sits hunched in her chair, feeling her body fill with heaviness. It's the heaviness of realizing how thin the line is between an ordinary evening and a nightmare, and how fortuitous her salvation was. It depended solely on the attentive gaze of a stranger from a dark corner. This simple fact deafens her more than anything else. Silence in the office stretches for several minutes. Alani sits, clenching her fists, staring into space. Then her gaze slowly rises to Ji-hoon. He's still sitting calmly in the chair across from her, watching her without overpowering her with his attention. "Why?" she finally says. Her voice is hoarse, but firmer. "Why did you do this? For me. We're complete strangers." The question had been hanging in the air since he'd started explaining. In a world where people often ignore other people's problems, his actions seemed not just noble, but unrealistic. He must have a motive, a hidden interest, something she didn't understand. Ji-hoon tilts his head slightly. He doesn't smile. His face remains serious. "You ask a complex question, expecting a complex answer," he says evenly. "But it's simple. I hate foul play, especially on my own turf. What he did was vile, cowardly. It ruins the atmosphere. Today he did it to you. Tomorrow, to someone else within my walls. I don't like it." He says it as if he were discussing a violation of the rules at a pool hall or a rowdy patron. There's no anger in his tone, only cold, pure disapproval. As if he's removed an unpleasant insect from his path that could ruin something important. His motive isn't saving her personally, but maintaining his own order. This order just so happens to coincide with her safety. The words "on his own turf" stuck in Alani's mind. She looked around. This spacious, quiet, expensively furnished office. The ease with which his men entered and disposed of DeMarcus. The calm confidence of Ji-hoon himself. She connects the dots. He's not just a regular. He's not a manager. He's something more. An owner? Perhaps. Or a man whose word is law here. Someone whose presence in the dark corner of the room isn't an accident, but part of control. This bar, this noisy, vibrant organism below, is his. He's a part of it, or he's its master. This realization brings a new wave of caution. The man before her isn't just a good Samaritan. He's a man of power, and he clearly has unconventional methods for maintaining it. He swapped the glasses, not called the police. He kept everything upstairs, in his quiet fortress, not on display in public. He has his own rules, and by those rules, what DeMarcus did is unacceptable. Her savior turns out to be a figure from a world she's only read about or seen in movies. It's terrifying, but at the moment, this fear is distant, muted, because the primal, animal fear, the fear of what could happen to her, is still too strong and fresh. And this person, whoever he is, was at her side in this crucial situation. Ji-hoon watches her process this information. He gives her time. Then his gaze slides to the sleeping man, to DeMarcus. "Don't worry about him," he says, bringing the conversation back to the practical. "He'll sleep for a few hours. My men will make sure he's taken home when he's fit enough to walk. He'll put him on his bed. He'll wake up with a severe headache and bad memories, and with the clear understanding that he'll never set foot in this area again, and he won't try to contact you." He says it as if it were a done deal. There's no threat in his voice, only confidence that it will be so. For him, the matter with DeMarcus is already closed. Then he looks back at Alani. "The choice is yours now. You can leave. I'll call you a trusted taxi, and it will take you wherever you say. Or you can stay here until you feel ready to go. It's safe and quiet here. No one will bother you." He doesn't insist, doesn't persuade. He simply states the options. Eleni understands that this isn't a trap. This is a real choice. He did what he thought was necessary, put an end to the foul play. Now her further actions are none of his business, unless she chooses to remain under his roof for a while. Elani looks at the door. The thought of going outside now, getting into a car with a stranger, and driving to an empty, dark apartment seems unbearable. Her legs are weak, her hands still tremble inside. The whole world outside this quiet room now seems hostile and unpredictable. Is she afraid to stay with this mysterious, powerful man? Yes. But right now, this fear is less concrete than the fear of being alone in the horror she's just endured. Here, in this room, the worst thing that could have happened to her this evening has already happened, and it passed her by. There's a strange, yet palpable peace here. She takes a deep, slow breath, trying to fill her lungs with air. Then she exhales. I'll stay, for a little while, if it really won't be a bother, she says quietly, almost apologetically. Ji-hoon simply nods. Okay, rest. Drink water. He doesn't say anything unnecessary. His offer was sincere, and he accepts her consent as fact. Minutes drag on in silence. Elani sips water. She looks at her hands, at the pattern of the carpet, anywhere but at DeMarcus. She needs to distract herself from the whirling thoughts in her head, otherwise she'll start panicking again. Ji-hoon asks unexpectedly. His question is simple, mundane. It breaks the silence, but not abruptly. Elani shudders, startled from her thoughts. I'm a graphic designer. I work in a small studio. I create website layouts, logos. Ji-hoon nods, showing polite interest. Interesting work. Requires patience and taste. Yes, Elani says, feeling strange about discussing work in this situation. And you? She quickly catches herself, realizing she's probably asked a stupid question. He doesn't flinch. I manage various businesses, mainly related to real estate and entertainment. His answer is evasive, but not secretive. He simply outlines the scope without going into detail. Any businessman might answer that way. What do you like to do when you're not working? He asks again, gently steering the conversation away from dangerous topics. Elani pauses for thought. I love taking photos. Old buildings, details. Sometimes I just walk around with my camera. And also, I'm learning to play the piano, slowly and badly. She tries to smile, and almost manages it. Photography is good. It teaches you to see things others miss, Ji-hoon remarks. His words sound simple, but they resonate with something, as if he's learned to see things himself. The conversation flows slowly, about simple things, about the music she likes to listen to, about what kind of coffee she prefers. No personal questions, no pressure. This ordinary, almost social conversation seems surreal against the backdrop of a man sleeping on the couch. But it works. Gradually, drop by drop, the ice inside Elani begins to melt. Her breathing evens out. The trembling in her hands subsides. Her brain, busy answering simple questions, temporarily lets go of the nightmarish images. Elani is surprised to find it easy to talk to him. He doesn't interrupt. He listens attentively. His questions are reasonable and not intrusive. There's no hidden threat or unpleasant tension emanating from him. On the contrary, there's something secure in his calm, like a rock in a raging sea that just nearly swallowed her. He's the complete opposite of DeMarcus. DeMarcus was loud, assertive, and eager to impress. Ji-hoon is quiet, reserved, and he makes an impression not with his words, but with his very being, the quietude around him, and the precision of his actions. She feels a strange sense of relief. Maybe it's that the worst is over. Maybe it's that there's someone there who's in complete control of the situation when she's lost all control. She doesn't have to make decisions, fight, or explain anything to the police or doctors. She can just sit, drink water, and talk about the piano, and that's a gift. Unexpected and priceless. Fades again. They sit in silence, but it's not the tense, oppressive silence of before. It's a calm, almost comfortable silence between two people who don't need to fill the void with words. And in this silence, Elani begins to discern another sound, muffled, distant, but rhythmic. It's music from the ground floor. The bass pierces the ceiling, creating a barely perceptible vibration in the floor and walls. Life goes on down there. Dancing, laughter, flirting, ordering at the bar. A world that was hers just a few dozen minutes ago now seems like a separate, alien planet. Here, up here, is an island of absolute peace and quiet. The contrast is astonishing. Just a staircase and a door separate one from the other. Chaos and order, danger and safety, noise and silence. Eleni listens to this muffled echo of the party. It reminds her of the beating of a vast, distant heart, or the sound of a train pulling away into the night while she remains on the safe, illuminated platform. This contrast doesn't frighten her. It fascinates her. It clearly shows her the boundary. The very boundary she would have just invisibly crossed, if not for the attentive gaze of the man opposite her. And now she is on this side, in silence, safe. She listens to the noise from another world and feels a strange, bitter gratitude for this silence. The silence is broken by a sharp, involuntary sigh, then a groan. The sound comes from the sofa. Alani and Jihoon turn their heads simultaneously. DeMarcus shifts. He squirms, trying to find a comfortable position, his face contorted in a grimace of pain or discomfort. He slowly, with great effort, lifts his eyelids. His eyes are cloudy, unseeing. He blinks several times, trying to focus on the ceiling. Then his gaze wanders around the room. He sees Ilani. He sees an unfamiliar man in a chair. His brows furrow in confusion and the effort of thought. He tries to prop himself up on his elbow, but his body won't obey. He falls back onto the pillow. Where? What? His voice is hoarse, weak, almost a whisper. He rubs his eyes again, as if trying to clear away a veil. He looks lost, confused, and deeply disoriented. He doesn't understand where he is, who these people are, or why his head feels so heavy and pounding. The last thing he remembers is the taste of pineapple smoothie, the bright light, and the anticipation. And then, blackout. Jihoon doesn't jump up. He slowly rises from the chair and approaches the sofa. He stops at a respectful distance, but close enough for DeMarcus to see him without turning his head. You're awake, Jihoon says. His voice isn't loud, but it's perfectly clear. There's not a shred of sympathy in it. You're in my office, above the loft bar. You're fine. Physically. DeMarcus looks at him, confused. His gaze shifts to Alani, and a spark of recognition and even greater confusion flashes in his eyes. Jihoon continues, not giving him time to collect his thoughts. You've been here for several hours. The reason for your condition is simple. You slipped something into the glass that was meant for Miss Alani. I saw it. I switched the glasses. You drank your own drink with something added. That's why you're in this state. The words fall like a slap of icy water. DeMarcus freezes. His sleepy, confused expression instantly turns to shock, then panic. He tries to sit up abruptly, though hesitantly. What? No! This is nonsense! His voice breaks, becoming shrill. I didn't add anything. You're confused. Alani, what is he talking about? He looks to her for support, but his gaze is shifty, deceitful. He tries to deny it, but his own weakness, the strange heaviness in his body, and the complete lapse of memory work against him. He turns pale. His hands begin to tremble. He understands that something has gone wrong, horribly wrong. You don't need to say anything. Jihoon cuts him off coldly. I'm not asking or caring about details. I'm simply stating a fact, and I'm informing you of the consequences. Jihoon doesn't raise his voice. He speaks in the same even, quiet tone, but every word rings out like a death sentence in the quiet office. You will never set foot in this area again. Not in this bar, not in the nearby cafes, not anywhere else within a 10-block radius. If I or my men see you here, the consequences will be very unpleasant. Do you understand? DeMarcus is silent, his mouth slightly open. He looks at Jihoon, and his eyes now reveal not only fear, but also a gradual understanding of who he's dealing with. This man's calm confidence is more frightening than any loud threat. Jihoon continues without waiting for an answer. Second, you will never try to contact Miss Alani again. Not by phone, not by text, not through social media. You deleted her number. You forgot what she looks like. If I find out you broke this rule, I will find you. And this time, we will have a much more serious conversation. He pauses, briefly, letting the words sink in. Your things are in your pockets. You're being taken home now. You're lucky you just slept it off. You won't be that lucky again. Do you have any questions? DeMarcus's expression suggests there are no questions. There's only visceral fear and a desire to disappear. He shakes his head silently, helplessly. Jihoon turns to the door and nods slightly. The door opens. The same two men who brought DeMarcus upstairs enter. Their faces remain impassive. They approach the sofa. Get up, one of them says calmly, but in a tone that brooks no argument. We'll walk you to the car. DeMarcus, still weak, struggles to his feet. He leans on the arm of one of the men. He doesn't look at Alani. His gaze is fixed on the floor. He looks pathetic, broken, and terrified to the core. All his ostentatious confidence, all the glamour of the evening, has evaporated, leaving only a shadow. Alani watches this from her chair. She expected to feel anger, disgust, maybe even pity, but she feels nothing, emptiness, lightness. as if the heavy, ugly stone she'd been unconsciously carrying all evening had finally fallen from her shoulders. She watches as he is led out of the office. The door closes. His presence, his negative, dangerous aura, disappears from the room, and with it, the last trace of that terrible what if. She exhales deeply. The relief is so strong it's almost physical. It washes away the last vestiges of trembling and cold inside her. He's over, forever. She's free of him, of this evening, of the version of herself that could be in his place now. Are you ready to go? Ji-hoon asks, still standing at the door. Alani nods. She stands. Her legs obey. Her body no longer trembles. She feels a strange emptiness and clarity at the same time. Ji-hoon opens the door and gestures for her to go ahead. They descend the same quiet stairs, but now they lead not to the noisy hall, but to a side exit. Ji-hoon opens the heavy door, and they emerge not onto a busy street with a queue, but into a quiet, clean alley. The air hits her face. It's cool, fresh, smells of night dampness, and morning! Alani raises her head. The sky to the east is not black, but dark blue, with a slight, blurred glow at the edge. The streetlights are still burning, but their light is less fierce. It seems tired. The city is silent. Somewhere in the distance, a lone car passes. This world, empty, washed, quiet, seems new and clean. It knows nothing of what happened a few hours ago. It is simply beginning anew. Let me give you a ride, Ji-hoon says. It'll be hard to find a car right now, and going alone, not the best idea. Alani looks at the empty sidewalks. She knows he's right. And after everything that's happened, his offer doesn't seem strange. It seems a logical continuation of this strange night. She nods. Thank you. I don't live very far. They walk down a side street toward a wider but still deserted street. A car is parked at the curb. It's dark, with clean, shiny lines. It's not flashy, but it looks very expensive and reliable. As they approach, the driver quickly gets out. It's not one of the two men. It's a different man, dressed in dark clothes, with a professional, inscrutable face. He silently opens the back door. Ji-hoon approaches the open door. He waits for Alani to approach, then gestures for her to sit. His movements are natural, polite, like those of a man accustomed to good manners. Nothing superfluous. No familiarity, only impeccable courtesy, which now, at dawn, after everything they've been through, seems almost unbelievable. Alani sits down on the soft leather seat. The interior smells of clean leather. Ji-hoon walks around to the back of the car and gets in on the other side. The door closes quietly but firmly behind him. The driver takes his seat. The interior becomes very quiet. The engine noise is barely audible. The car pulls smoothly into motion and pulls out onto an empty street. They drive past shuttered storefronts, dormant buildings, and the occasional streetlight. The city resembles a set after a performance. Alani sits, looking out the window. She feels the need to say something. Simple politeness demands it, but words seem too small and insignificant for what has happened. Thank you, she finally says, without turning her head, watching the sidewalks flash by. I don't know what I'd do without you. Her words sound simple, almost childish, but they contain all the sincerity she's capable of right now. Next to her, Ji-hoon nods silently. He, too, looks out his window at the waking city. No need to thank me, he says quietly. I just fixed the situation. They don't speak anymore. The silence in the car is not oppressive. She is calm, tired. Alani feels herself finally relaxing. The tension of the last few hours begins to fade, replaced by a deep, almost painful weariness. She closes her eyes for a second, just to rest them, and feels the weight of her eyelids become unbearable. But she is not sleeping. She simply exists in this quiet cocoon of a moving car, between the terrible night that has ended and the new morning that is about to begin. The car stops in front of her house. It's an ordinary building, unremarkable in every way, but right now it feels like the safest place on earth to Alani. Ji-hoon gets out first and opens the door for her again. His gestures remain just as precise and polite. Alani steps out onto the sidewalk. The morning air is no longer so chilly. There's a faint hint of the day's warmth in it. She turns to say goodbye, to say thank you one more time, but the words stick in her throat. What else can she say? Ji-hoon looks at her. His face seems less enigmatic in the early morning light, but no less calm. He's in no hurry to leave. He takes a thin leather wallet from the inside pocket of his jacket. From it, he extracts a single business card. It's simple, made of thick matte cardboard. There are no logos, company names, or job titles, just two words, Han Ji-hoon, and beneath them, a phone number, printed in a clear, strict font. He hands over the card, not quickly, but carefully, giving her time to refuse. Ilani looks at the white rectangle in his fingers, then at his face. Take it, he says quietly. No obligations, but if you ever feel unsafe again, if anything or anyone bothers you, call anytime. I'll listen. His words don't sound like an empty formality or an attempt to establish a connection. They carry the same cold, factual confidence with which he spoke to DeMarcus. This isn't an offer of help, it's a statement of opportunity. He's giving her a tool, a key, a very specific and powerful one. Eleni slowly takes the card. The cardboard is rough beneath her fingers. She simply nods, unable to find the words. Okay, she finally breathes. Jihoon responds with a slight nod. Nothing more. He gets back into the car. The door closes silently. The dark car pulls smoothly away from the curb, turns around, and disappears around the corner, dissolving into the gray tones of dawn. Ilani stands alone. She holds a small card in her hand. Silence fills her ears, broken only by the distant song of the first birds. She raises her head and looks at the sky. It is now light blue, almost transparent in the east. The night is over. She takes a deep breath. The air smells not of smoke or alcohol, but simply of morning. She turns and walks to the door of her building. She takes out her keys. The mechanism clicks familiarly and loudly in the morning silence. As she climbs the stairs, she feels no fear. She feels a strange, crystalline clarity. She enters her apartment. Peace and quiet. Everything is in its place. Her cat stretches lazily on the couch. Ilani puts down her purse and takes off her pinching shoes. She walks over to the table and places Han Ji-hoon's business card on the clean surface. The white rectangle on the dark wood looks out of place, yet significant. She doesn't hide it or display it. She simply leaves it where it is. A fact, a reminder. She turns on the kettle. While the water boils, she stands by the window and watches the city finally wake up. The first people appear. The first shops open. Ordinary life. She understands that this night has forever divided her life into before and after. But in this after, there is no fear. There is knowledge. Knowledge of how fragile security can be. And knowledge that there is a strange, silent justice in the world that sometimes intervenes at the very last moment. She feels not joy, but a deep, bottomless weariness and an immense, quiet relief. The kettle turns off. Ilani pours boiling water into a cup. She takes it in her hands, feeling the warmth through the ceramic. She looks at the card again. Just a name and a number. Not a promise, but an opportunity. A loophole into another hidden world, which once briefly opened for her, to save her, and then closed again. She takes a sip of hot tea. This simple act seems incredibly important. She's home. She's safe. The night is behind her. A new day lies ahead. It's just beginning. But it's beginning differently. A few days later, life has outwardly returned to normal. Ilani goes to work, makes models, watches TV series in the evenings, or tries to figure out a new melody on the piano. But inside, everything has changed. She's become more attentive. She no longer smiles at strangers just out of politeness. She double-checks that the door is locked. She always keeps her phone within reach. This experience has left an invisible but lasting mark on her psyche, like a scar. She sometimes catches herself thinking about that night. Images pop up of their own accord. The neon lights, the glint in DeMarcus's eyes, Han Ji-hoon's calm face in the dim light of the office. She doesn't think of him with romantic awe. He's a natural phenomenon to her, like a rock that suddenly appears in a storm, against which the waves crash. He's impossible to forget, but it's also strange to think of him as someone from her world. He's from another dimension, one that once briefly intersected with hers. The business card lies on her dresser. She doesn't hide it, but she doesn't carry it with her either. It's simply a fact of her life now, like a scar, a reminder of danger, and of unexpected salvation. Sometimes her fingers reach out to the rough cardboard, just to touch it, to make sure it was real. A week later, her phone rings briefly and unfamiliarly. It's not DeMarcus. His number was blocked and forgotten the very first night. The screen displays numbers she doesn't recognize. Her heart skips a beat. She thinks about the card. But no, this number is different. She picks up the phone. Hello? Miss Ilani. The voice was male, polite, impersonal. Not Jihoon. Yes, it's me. This is the security service at the Villainy residential complex. Have you received any unwanted calls or visits in the last few days? Ilani frowns. No. Everything is calm. What happened? Just a routine check, the voice replies. There was a suspicious incident in the area a week ago. We're calling residents, especially women living alone. We're glad you're all okay. Have a nice day. The line goes dead. Ilani lowers the phone. Routine inspection. She doesn't believe it. Too much of a coincidence. She glances at the business card on the dresser. This is his job, quiet, unobtrusive surveillance. He said DeMarcus wouldn't show. And he didn't just threaten, he made sure it happened. And he made sure she knew it without having to interact with him directly. That's his style. Impeccable, unobtrusive, effective. She doesn't feel relief, but something more complex. A security she doesn't pay for and didn't ask for. It's a shield she doesn't hold up. It's simply there. It's both comforting and disconcerting. She owes it, but it doesn't demand anything in return. It simply watches, correcting the imbalance in its universe, of which she has now, willy-nilly, become a part. A few more days pass. She returns home late from work. On the table by the door lies a small, flat package made of thick brown paper. It has no markings, only her name, handwritten in a clear, unfamiliar hand. Inside is a book, used, paperback, a photo album by some Japanese photographer, with black and white shots of old Tokyo streets. These are the kinds of photos she once mentioned she loved. There is no note in the book, nothing. Ilani flips through the pages. The frames are captivating. They are about silence, about detail, about light. They are about the ability to see. She sits on the floor in the hallway and looks at these photographs and understands. This is not a gift in the usual sense. It is a message, silent, like everything he does. A message that he remembers, that his attention to detail is not only about danger, it is simply his nature, and that in his world, strange and frightening, there is a place for this too, for beauty, captured by someone's lens. She places the book on the shelf, next to the card. Now they are two artifacts from that night. One is a symbol of threat and protection. The other is a hint of something more complex, something she hesitates to name, perhaps respect. She goes to bed. Before she falls asleep, her gaze falls again on the white rectangle on the dresser. She doesn't call. She won't call unless something truly terrible happens. But the very presence of this number, this quiet guarantee, changes something in her posture, in her outlook on the world. She doesn't feel defenseless. In the morning, she wakes to the familiar ringing of her alarm clock. A ray of sunlight lies on the floor. The cat purrs at her feet. Ilani stands and stretches. She goes to the window and looks out at the living city. She feels more than just relief after the nightmare. She feels a strange new strength, not a dull certainty of her own invulnerability, but knowledge. Knowledge that the danger is real, but also knowledge that the world contains not only meanness, but also its own harsh, silent justice. And sometimes she wears the face of a calm man in a dark suit who simply abhors foul play. She turns away from the window to get ready for work. Her life goes on. She's still Ilani, a graphic designer, a photography enthusiast, and a poor pianist, but she's not quite the same anymore. She's a person who keeps a business card with the name Han Ji-hoon in her dresser drawer, and this knowledge, quiet and intimate, has become part of her new beginning, a beginning in which she's no longer a victim, but someone who has navigated darkness and emerged from it with an unusual, quiet ally on the other side of ordinary life. Weeks passed. The traces of that night began to resemble not fresh wounds, but old, almost healed scars. They didn't hurt, but they reminded her of themselves in certain lighting, or an awkward turn of thought. Ilani returned to her usual routes: home, work, shop, home, but these routes were now charted with greater awareness. She noticed the faces around her, assessed the situation on a deserted street before turning onto it, her fingers always groping for the keys in her pocket, ready to become a weapon at any moment. She no longer received strange calls or packages. The Japanese photographer's book sat on a shelf among others, unremarkable. The business card lay in the top drawer of the dresser, under neat stacks of socks. She hadn't forgotten about it, but she didn't think about it constantly either. It had become part of the landscape of her new, more cautious life. There was a rush at work, a large project for a new client. Ilani dove headfirst into the work, drawings, color palettes, endless revisions. It was good therapy. It required concentration and creativity, not reflection. In the evenings, she came home tired but satisfied. She almost stopped flinching at sudden noises. One Friday, her colleagues decided to go to a bar after work. Not that one, of course, a small, noisy pub cafe near the office. At first, Ilani considered declining. The thought of a crowd, loud music, and alcohol still made her slightly nauseous. But then she thought, if not now, then when? She couldn't hide forever. She agreed. The pub was packed. A buzz of conversation, the clinking of glasses, the smell of beer and chips. Ilani sat at the end of the table, next to two girls from the marketing department. She ordered a sparkling water with lime. She simply held the glass in her hand. listening to the conversations, occasionally chiming in. She felt uneasy, but she managed. She was here, and that was all that mattered. And then, her gaze, sweeping across the room, caught a familiar profile. A man stood at the bar, his back to her, tall, in a dark, well-fitting jacket, dark hair perfectly cut. He was talking to the bartender, calmly explaining something, and the bartender was listening with the air of someone listening not to a customer, but to the owner. Alani's heart skipped a beat, then started pounding. Han Ji-hoon, here, in this simple, noisy pub. He turned. His gaze, calm and all-seeing, slid across the room. He wasn't looking for anyone. He was simply assessing the situation, and his gaze lingered on her for a split second. There was no surprise, no recognition. There was simply a brief, instantaneous registration of the fact. She was here. Then his eyes moved on just as calmly. He nodded to the bartender, turned, and walked out the side door, which Alani knew led to the back rooms or the backyard. He appeared and disappeared like a shadow. None of her colleagues noticed. Alani sat, clutching her glass of water so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wasn't afraid. It was strange. It was as if she'd seen a ghost from another dimension, materializing for a moment in her mundane world, and once again, confirming the invisible connection. This pub, it turned out, was also on his turf. His reach was wider than she'd thought, and his attention, his silent guardianship too. That brief moment changed everything. She felt not surveillance, but protection. He wasn't watching her personally. He was simply patrolling his domain, and her presence there was recorded. Everything was fine. No threats. She took a sip of water and suddenly smiled at someone's joke. Genuinely, the tension that had gripped her since entering was gone. She was under an invisible but secure dome. In the world where Han Ji-hoon existed, people like DeMarcus didn't stand a chance. At least not here. After that evening, something finally clicked inside her. She stopped looking over her shoulder. She started listening to music on headphones outside again, though she turned the volume down. She even agreed to a date with a guy from the IT department, quiet and a little shy. They went to a movie, then had coffee. He was polite, didn't try to rush things. She felt safe, not because he was somehow special, but because her internal radar, tuned that night, was silent. There was no falseness about him, no feverish glint. There was simply human normality. She returned home after her date and, while changing, saw the dresser drawer again. She opened it and took out the business card. She held it in her hands. Rough cardboard, strict font. She put it back, but not at the very bottom, but on top of a pile of socks. In a prominent place, not as a talisman, but as a reminder to herself, a reminder that she had walked through fire and not burned, that she was stronger than she thought, and that in this world, no matter how difficult it was, sometimes a quiet, unwritten justice prevails. She walked over to the piano, an old digital one that occupied a corner of the living room. She sat down and opened the lid. She'd hesitated for a long time, as if the music demanded a calm she didn't have. Now she had it. She began to play. A simple, slow melody, the one she'd been practicing before that fateful night. Her fingers fumbled at first, but then her body's memory took over. The sounds, pure and slightly sad, filled the quiet apartment. She played, looking at the notes, but seeing not them before her, but a dark bar, white curls in neon light, a calm face in the shadows, and then the city at dawn, so new and serene. She played, and there was no fear in the music. There was memory, there was gratitude, there was acceptance of what had happened to her, and of what happened after, acceptance of this strange, silent connection with a man she might never see again, but whose presence had forever changed the trajectory of her life. When the last sound faded, she dropped her hands to her knees. The apartment was silent, but this was a different kind of silence, not the frightening emptiness after a nightmare, but a full, vibrant peace. She got up, turned off the light in the living room, and went to bed. Tomorrow would be Saturday. She planned to stroll through the city with her camera, to capture the first signs of spring. She fell asleep with a light heart, knowing that the new day would bring not danger, but simply life. Ordinary, fragile, but now protected by her own vigilance and the invisible shield that once, in her darkest moment, stood between her and the abyss. Her new beginning, so shaky at first, now found solid ground under her feet, and she was ready to move on. Spring had finally arrived. The city blossomed with sticky green trees and the bright spots of the first flower beds. Alani left the house with a camera slung around her neck. She planned to walk along the old promenade by the river, where cast iron lanterns and paving from the early 20th century still remained. She loved capturing the contrast between the old stone and the young foliage. She walked unhurriedly, taking in the details, a crack in the granite, the play of light on the water, the whimsical shadow cast by a grate. She took pictures, completely immersing herself in the process. It was her form of meditation. The world narrowed to the viewfinder, and only form, light, and shadow remained. The promenade was sparsely populated. A couple of pensioners on a bench, a mother pushing a stroller, a jogger running past, and one more person who caught her eye. He was sitting on one of the far benches, his back to the river, facing the alley. He wasn't reading, wasn't looking at his phone. He was simply sitting, observing. He wore a simple dark jacket, and there was something familiar about him, not in his features, that was hidden under a cap and sunglasses, in his posture, in this absolute relaxed stillness, in the feeling that he wasn't resting, but doing work. Alani felt a slight chill down her spine. She looked away, pretending to photograph the opposite bank. Her heart began to pound, anxiously and dully, slowly, as if peering through a viewfinder. She turned and snapped a few more random shots, gradually moving toward the exit from the promenade. She didn't run. She walked calmly, but her insides twisted into a tight knot. Was it him? One of his men? Or just a paranoid fantasy? But her instincts, heightened by her experience, screamed no. This was no accident. She stepped out onto the busy street, lost in the stream of people. She entered the first coffee shop she came to, ordered a cappuccino at the counter, and sat by the window overlooking the promenade exit. Her hands were shaking. She clasped them around the warm glass. 15 minutes later, a man in a dark jacket emerged from the alley. He didn't look back, didn't search for her. He crossed the street and got into a nondescript gray sedan parked half a block away. The car pulled away and disappeared into the traffic. This wasn't surveillance. It was a test, or a demonstration, a message. We're here. Everything is under control. You're safe. Alani finished her coffee, feeling the tremors gradually subside, replaced not by anger, but by a strange weariness. She wasn't angry at the intrusion. She understood the logic. Jihoon had taken responsibility for her safety, and he fulfilled it the best he knew how. Totally, systematically, without sentimentality. He didn't ask if she needed it now. He was simply ensuring the terms of his unspoken contract were met. DeMarcus and any threat he posed must be neutralized, and to do that, she had to keep her finger on the pulse. She returned home, not with photographs of the old stone, but with a heavy feeling in her soul. She went to the dresser and opened the drawer. The business card was still in its place. She took it and went to the phone. Her fingers dialed a number. She heard the beeps. 1, 2, hello? The voice was the same. Low, calm, without intonation. Eleni took a deep breath. It's Alani. A short pause. I'm listening. I was on the embankment today. I saw one of your people. Or was it just my fear? Another pause. This was a routine perimeter check. No active threats detected. You have nothing to worry about. His tone was businesslike, like a doctor reporting test results. I don't need constant protection, Eleni said, her own voice firmer than she'd expected. I appreciate what you did, but I can't live with the feeling of being watched. There was silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. I understand, Jihoon finally said. The surveillance will be terminated, but the number will remain active. If the situation changes, you know what to do. Thank you, Alani whispered. You're welcome. Have a nice day. The connection was lost. Alani lowered the phone. She stood in the middle of the room, holding that very same business card. She had just set a boundary, and he accepted it. No argument, no hard feelings, no attempts to explain that she didn't understand what was best for her. He simply acknowledged it and rescinded the order. This respect was more valuable than any protection. He saw her not as an object to be guarded, but as a person capable of making decisions, even if he considered them less than optimal. She put the card back in the drawer and closed it. This time, completely, she wouldn't touch it again. But she knew it was there, and she knew that if a real storm broke, one ring would set its silent, efficient mechanism in motion again. In the meantime, for now, she would live her life, not under surveillance, but simply knowing that somewhere, there was an emergency exit. And that was enough. Alani walked to the window. The spring sun was shining outside. She no longer felt anyone's gaze on her back, only the warmth of the glass and the endless, free sky above the city. Her new beginning had finally become truly hers.